Good evening. My name is Victor Vega, President of the Underfashion Club. I welcome all of you, and I thank you for being here. This has been such a fantastic turn, and we owe all to our ladies. Miss Ross, can you please? We're starting. Okay. Now you know what the evening is going to be all about it. Thank you. A couple announcements. We have a membership event on November 11th. I'm sorry, Christine, I don't know the details, but it's November 11th, so please mark your calendars accordingly. We also have a holiday party, Underfashion Club holiday party, on December 9th. I expect each and every one of you to be there, and we will appreciate. Thank you. It is fitted at this the beginning of this evening of icons that we give a special recognition to our good friend Karen Monge, who recently retired from the women wear daily. Karen, can you join us, please? Karen, can you join us, please? Front stage. Your many years of journalism, your insight into covering our industry, and your support to the Underfashion Club makes you a very special to us. I would like to present to you, as a token of our esteem and appreciation, a little present to you. I know you love cats, so you have a Baccarat cat. Would you like to say something?
This is so, unexpected. Everyone kept this humongous secret. So I'm totally thrilled, and I don't know what else to say, but I'm not going away.
Good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the Programs Committee for this fabulous evening. The co-chairs, Debbie Gedney and Joe Smith, deserve a great round of applause. They put together this evening of icons with such distinguished ladies, very strong ladies, and from our industry. I am sure that it will be very interesting and probably entertaining. We will see. To begin the program, I call Amy Bitney, who will be moderating this program. Thank you. have a great time, and let's do it.
Thank you, Victor. Welcome, everyone. Gonna have a seat.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Gonna get out my notes because I don't have it completely memorized yet. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Underfashion Club's presentation of Getting Intimate with the Icons. I'd like to take a moment to set the tone of the evening. It looks as if most of us just got off work. So if you could all do me a little favor and undo your top button. That's better, thanks. Tonight will be a relaxed evening of discussions that are meant to inspire, educate, and entertain you. On a side note, we will continue to have the cash bar open throughout the evening, at the front bar, I am told. I encourage you to take advantage of this because I read somewhere that it's been scientifically proven that the more you drink, the funnier I get. When preparing for tonight, Debbie and Joe told me to be inspired by Charlie Rose. My first response was, who the hell is that? I know it hurts. I did hear that. But with a little research and the help of YouTube, I think I got this. Can you hold this for a second?
Oh no. Perfect.
Not bad, huh? Before you sits over 200 years of experience. And that's not even including the 3 that I bring to the table. You're going to have to bear with me through the next part. I was feeling a bit punny today. These ladies have helped to build the foundations of our industry and have helped to shape it into the success it is today. Of course it didn't happen overnight. It took a mixture of brain and bronze mixed with a cheeky personality. They fought their way to the top, outperforming the throng of their peers, vying for their positions. But before we get started, let me give you a brief overview of their backgrounds. That's all.
Be careful. Be careful, we'll kill you.
To,
Is that working without the
it's working.
Okay.
She says they're working without the wire. She's the best, I swear. Tonight you're meeting 3 icons of our industry, Norma Reinhardt, Janet Peters, and Roslyn Harte. All contributors to building and supporting the intimate apparel industry. All are Femi honorees, some multiple times. They will tell you their story, thriving in a time when women had to be tough to succeed. These women are strong. They never compromised being a woman and retained their dignity while still having fun. Maybe a little too much fun at times.
True.
We'll start with Norma. She began her career as a children's buyer at Abram & Strauss in Brooklyn, now known as Macy's. She moved up to Intimate Apparel, and as the bra buyer, she had the biggest open-to-buy in the country. She later became the VP and merchandiser at Teen Form, which is now Wacoal America. After retiring from Wacoal, she returned to the industry as VP Product Developer at Westchester Lace, and later chose... Who's playing with their mic? Developer at Westchester Lace, and later chose to devote herself full-time to being an executive on the board of Housing Works Charity, helping families with AIDS. She also works with the New York State Omnibudsman, making sure that nursing homes are treating our seniors well. As if that wasn't enough, she is also the past president and active member of the Intimate Apparel Square Club. You're allowed to smile and wave. Next, we have Miss Janet Peters. Janet began her career as a fit model for Vanity Fair in the early 1950s in Reading, Pennsylvania. Janet rose to become the first female VP of Vanity Fair Mills and the first female senior VP of Vanity Fair Corporation. Throughout her illustrious career, she has always been a huge supporter of new talent in our industry. Today, she is a moving force in Pennsylvania Rotary, other various charities, and our own Underfashion Club and Intimate Apparel Square Club. And last but certainly not quietest is Miss Roslyn Harte. Born in Manhattan in 1924 in the same hospital as her mother, who was born in 1904, and grew up in Brooklyn. She is a native New Yorker and Brooklyn tough. Roslyn's only design education was in learning design in high school. Her first job in 1941 was at Vogue magazine, where she worked for 4 years. During that time, the war stopped the fashion industry to make parachutes and uniforms. She started working as a trousseau lingerie designer at Lady Duff in 1946. In 1954, she left to start Roslyn Harte Lingerie Originals, freelancing in intimate apparel. The studio evolved into a design contract enterprise, supplementing the design teams at companies like Maidenform, Vanity Fair, and many more. Today, Roslyn helps startup companies in intimates, active, and swim. Her studio just recently celebrated its 60th year anniversary on April 7th of this year. Roslyn is also extremely active on the Underfashion Club board and Intimate Apparel Square Club. So now we've got to know you a little bit, ladies. We're going to start into our questions of the evening. The questions are going to run that if you feel like you have a pertinent story or you'd like to address it, please feel free. Take turns. And also if you hear comments from another individual that you feel the need to respond to, we'll certainly allow that as well. So our first question, and I'd like all three of you to answer this if you can. We learned a little bit about your bios already, but if you could tell us a little bit more about when and how did you come into the lingerie industry?
Looking at each other.
Somebody take charge.
All right, I'll start. I was a children's wear buyer, as you heard, and we had in A&S a great buyer. I don't know if any of you remember Sadie Brick, but she was incredible. And Sadie had her eye on me, and what happened was I went to Europe on a trip to buy children's wear, and I came back and I was sent upstairs to the executive offices and told I was now going to be the corset and bra buyer.
Of course, it wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy, especially the time people were burning bras and taking off their girdles. So anyway, that's how I got into this area.
Janet?
I got in this area through a dare. You know, we all have gangs when we're young, and so the gang said to me, you know, there's an ad in the paper for a Vanity Fair model, and you've been going to all these schools, why don't you apply for it? I said, no, I don't want it. I love the job I have. They said, you don't want it? Because you know you won't get it. We dare you to go and try. And that's how I started with Vanity Fair. So anyway, they kept sending me these letters, and I kept sending them back, and I never put my weight on it. And finally, they called me and wanted to have a meeting with me at Vanity Fair, and they said, why don't you put your weight on these forms? And I said, because you would never even ask me to come down here, because at that time I was 142 pounds, but it was all muscle. You know, it wasn't fat. So anyway, I went down for the interview, and then they called me back later, and I got the job out of 288 girls. And I still didn't want the job.
That's surprising.
So anyway, here I was, a hick from the sticks, and I get this job at Vanity Fair. So one day, the boss calls me in, and the owner of the company, who was Mr. Barbie at the time, and I started in October of 1951, and he called me in November, and he said, "How do you like your job?" I said, "I don't like it," and the place I was working before said, "If you come back before the end of the year, we'll pay you the same salary. But you'll make more money because you don't need the bus going back and forth." And he said, "Well, what don't you like about it?" I said, "All I'm doing is sitting here waiting for a designer to design a garment to fit, to try it on. I'm not learning anything about the business." The next day, he calls me in his office, and all these people were in the office. The purchasing department, pattern makers, designers, etc. And he said to me, "Each one of you take her and teach her your division." And that's how I learned about Vanity Fair, and so I was there for 47 years.
That's a hard act to follow. I got out of school and went to work at Vogue, as you heard, and when the war was over, I decided it was time to do something with the education I had gotten in high school. We started in high school with 14 classes and only graduated 28 people as designers. So I felt that I had to make use of it. I bought Women's Wear Daily, went through the want ads, and because I was lazy, I only answered one ad because the other was box numbers, and I don't like to write letters. And the box number was for Lady Duff lingerie, high style, where they got this word from, lingerie, seeking a young designer. So I wrote a letter saying, "I think I qualify for all the requirements. I'd like to have an appointment." And I went up to 3080's 32nd, which is next door, and I met Ben Garcia, who was the owner. He was about 64. I was 21, around there. I weighed 105 pounds. I was a 32 double D, and he was very nice. Before I went to see him, I went to Bonwatella's and Altman's to check out the line. I did my homework. I told him I had always dreamt about being a lingerie designer. What a lie.
Well played.
And I left, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But I sent him a bread and butter letter. Now, anybody under 50 doesn't know what that is. Years ago, if you went to visit somebody or they were nice to you, you sent a thank you note. That was a bread and butter letter. And I sent him a bread and butter letter saying, again, how impressed I was with the place and how impressed I was with him, and I really would love an opportunity to try for the job. So he invited me back. And he said to me, "You really think you can do this?" I said, "I think so." I said, "I don't care what you pay me." He said, "What?" I said, "No, I really don't care what you pay me. You can pay me anything you want." He said, "What were you getting on your last job?" At Vogue, I was getting $75. I told him I was getting $150. And he said, "Well," I said, "but I really don't care." I said, he said, "All right, I'll hire you for 4 weeks, and we'll discuss whether or not you're staying." So I worked there for 4 weeks, and in the 4 weeks, the designing room was next to the showroom. I met Altman's, I met DePinner's, I met Oppenheim Collins. If you're old enough, you remember the names. Baumwood-Teller, Bergdorf Goodman. He would call me out when my styles were being shown. And we did a collection. Trousseau at that time was your wedding night ensemble with matching slip. Don't ask me why the slip had to match the nightgown and peignoir, but they did, et cetera, et cetera. And I got good experience. I'd finish a garment, bring it into him at 5 o'clock. The next morning, I went down to the pattern maker. He figured the yardage. Then I went next door to the factory, and they went through every step in the factory, and the forelady would say, that is at that machine, and then you're going to that machine, and then it's going to that machine. No, no, no. They have to stay in that corner before it goes to that corner. So I learned about steps in manufacturing. After I was there 6 weeks, my sample hand, who was my age, said, "When are you asking him for your raise?" And I said, "He'll fire me." She said, "No, he won't. He's selling the stuff. Ask him." So I did. And he said, "Well, yeah, people seem to like what you're doing. And, well, there'll be a raise in your envelope." I said, "How much?" He said, $50. I said, "Oh, no, 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 no. Designers don't get that. Designers make $500 a week." He said, "What?" He said, "I'll give you $350. I said, "I'll start at that."
Should have brought my pen up here to take notes. But then again, I don't want to get fired. Question number 2. Again, this is for all 3 of you ladies. How did you transition the different levels in your career? You can have 5 seconds.
Janet?
Me? Yeah, we'll start at your end.
Well, I'm probably not the one to answer this. Actually, I loved being the buyer of corsets and bras, and I think I did a pretty good job. But, after many, many years passed, someone came to me and said, "Norma, we were thinking of doing, we have someone over in Europe who's doing bras. They're very different from the ones that are done here. Would you go over and maybe take a look at them?" So I said, "I don't know, I have to ask my boss." So I went back to A&S and I said, blah, 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 and he would like me to go over there. And they said, "Look, if he's willing to pay for it, go." So I went over to Europe, and I started to see bras that were very, very different than we do. Very glam, as they say today, and exciting. And when I came back, I said, they look great. I think I could sell them. So I said, let's give it a try, blah, blah, blah. And we did give it a try. And that was how I made my connection with my next job, which was Teen Form. It sounds funny, but actually I went over to Teen Form more for the women's end of it, not for the teen end of it. But I did get involved in the teenagers, and a lot of things were changing with young people then. And anyway, so I became a vice president over there. And then lo and behold, Wacol came around. They said, "We're buying Teen Form." And there were 2 of us that went over at that time to Wacol. And I was one of them. And let me tell you something. When you work for Wacol, you learn a lot. Things are very, very different with the Japanese and how they work and all. And I learned an awful lot. I'm sorry I'm not being funny, but I really, really learned a lot. But I want to say one thing. I will always be a retailer. That was in my blood, and that's helped me through my career. And then I made another jump for a 3rd career into being a supplier. And let me tell you, I went into the lace business. I didn't know a thing about lace. I still don't know a thing about lace. I was told by my boss, "You're not a lace person," but I had ideas. And that's how I did it. Anyway, that's it.
Janet?
Well, after being with Vanity Fair quite a while, they decided to go into private label. and they made me manager of private label. I went up to the chairman and I said, I just can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. He said to me, Janet, don't thank me. You are going to live in hell. And I said, well, why? He said, because Vanity Fair doesn't want a private label. And he said, our customers don't want us to do private label, and you're going to have a difficult time. Well, to me, a difficult time, I didn't think it was exactly what it was going to be, but my first customer was J.C. Penney. Men buyers, men merchandisers, you name it. They used to take my garments, look at them, pull over the waste paper basket, and drop them in the waste paper basket. Now, in those days, I didn't even use the word S. I didn't even use the word D.
I think we're all
But
over
let
21.
me tell you, I learned a lot. Because they wanted me to cry, they wanted me to give up, because I was the only female salesperson at J.C. Penney, and that was our first account. But it taught me a lot. It taught me, stick by your guns, kid. And that's what I did. Number one, yeah, I learned a few words. I never used them, but I learned them.
Oh, you do
And
use them?
I enjoyed them from then on. Enjoyed the whole business from then on.
Not telling the truth, she does use them. When I was at Lady Duff, I guess about 4 or 5 years, the company was sold. And I didn't like the new people coming in, so I decided it was time to move on. And my game plan was to freelance for 2 years. And I didn't want to work in somebody else's office. I wanted to work in my own office and have my own staff and direct how I want the garment to be made. And so I found, and Mr. DeGarcy, who was the gentleman who hired me originally, helped me find space in 470 Park Avenue South, which is around the corner that way. I've never left this block. And I signed a 2-year lease for 500 square feet at $350 a month. No way today. And I hired a sample hand. And then a month later, I hired my first intern from FIT and then another sample hand. And I had a gentleman come in by the name of Leonard Barrard, who had just gotten out of the Army, and his father was running the company. They were competitors of Miss Elaine. And I helped them start that company to the point that they did close to $10 million when we parted. They were a client of mine for 11 years. We did, at that time, $4 million was a lot in sleepwear. I was at the beginning of the baby doll era. We made the cover of Life magazine with the Skidoo baby doll. And the studio evolved into being a contract studio. One of the things I didn't mention before is Ben Garcy made me go to City College to study cost engineering. So whenever I delivered a garment, I was able to tell the manufacturer who I was doing it for how many yards of fabric, how many buttons, how many zippers, and what the cost was. Because the second thing out of their mouths when they looked at the garment was, oh, it's great, how much will it sell for? So they were able to do, so the studio became a contractor, a design contractor, servicing not only creative design, but giving all the information that related to it. That's it. And we've, of course, as you heard, I've had the studio now for 60 years. As of last April 7th, I was in business 60 years.
Truly amazing. Are we ready? Question number 3. In what way would you say you were uniquely able to level the playing field and bypass any stigma you felt as a woman in those days? Janet, I'm going to let you go first.
You're picking on the wrong one.
You can take it.
Well, I'll tell
Just
you,
telling how strong you were.
being a female in those days was great, but you had to watch yourself with everything. Number one, you have to watch your language. Number two, you had to watch everything you said. And number three, you had to be careful that you didn't hurt anyone's feelings. So we tried to work it around that way. And it happened that we all got along with the buyers. And I always had a feeling I wanted my buyers to look better than any other buyer. And worked very strongly with them, worked very hard with them. And many times they'd come back from Europe and they'd say, keep your office open, and they'd get in here maybe at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and they'd come to the office at that hour of the night. And of course, in those days, we had elevator men, et cetera, working 24 hours, or we couldn't do that today. And then they'd show me garments, tell me what they'd like to have, et cetera. And what we did in our company was try to do the best we could for each buyer, because each buyer had to have, in private label, each buyer had to have something different. And it worked out very well. So we enjoyed it.
Who else has something to add?
Well, actually, as a buyer, I really didn't have very much problem as far as working with men or anything. I mean, we were mostly women as bra and girdle buyers at that time. I did go in once and ask to be a menswear buyer, and they laughed in my face. They thought it was the funniest thing they ever heard. And I do remember, you know, it's sort of a little different from what we're discussing, but I remember being my first trip to Europe. And I'm sitting in the Excelsior Hotel in Florence, and I'm sitting there writing down every little expense that I had. And there were a bunch of the shoe buyers there that day from my company. And they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, you know, I'm keeping my records." They said, "Norma, you don't do it that way." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, if someone takes you out to dinner, you put it down as an expense, okay?" I said, oh, I didn't know that. "Well, let me tell you, these guys got hold of me, and they told me everything that you shouldn't do, you do."
Quite the learning curve, but a good education.
Exactly.
How about you, Roz?
I didn't have to, I never had a problem with boys, and I certainly never had a problem with men. I was, and still don't. I was very comfortable. I never, there were incidents, and if there were incidents, I told them off. And if they didn't take that, and it had to be anything more than that, they felt it.
Roz kicks butt.
Be sure to only show her my front side. All right. Today we talk a lot about work-life balance. In years past, it was much more difficult to juggle a career and home life without all the technology and advances we have today. How did you do it, and what did you rely on?
I'm going to start with this one because I kind of thought about this. First of all, the way I did it with having a child and working, of course, was I had a great husband, and my daughter was just fabulous. They understood me and what made me tick. But I got to tell you a funny one that I kind of kept for tonight. I was on a plane going over to Dusseldorf to the shows, and on the plane we got notice that there could be a bomb on the plane. And we had to land at Shannon Airport. That meant taking our shoes off, leaving everything. I remember putting my passport in my panty girdle at the time. That was it. You could take nothing with you. And we made an emergency landing. went into the airport and found out at that time that there was, in fact, a bomb on the plane. So now we're given, here we are, a few hundred people standing around without shoes on, and we're given the opportunity to make one call home. Stand in line, it's my turn, I'm on the phone, the operator says, "Madam," she says, "there seems to be a youngster on the phone and she won't put your party on," which would have been Robert. And I said, "Put her on." Because this time I'm really getting slightly hysterical. Okay, it's all coming to me, what could have happened and everything else. So my daughter Danielle gets on the phone. She says, "Mommy, you know Daddy said if he has a patient, he can't be disturbed." Get your father on the phone. Now, Robert gets on the phone in his very French accent. He is a shrink, and he gets on the phone, and he said, what do you think he says to me? "Normina, how do you feel about it?" I scream. They must have heard me over in Düsseldorf. I said, "How do I feel about it?" But they were the people that support. They really did support me. Right?
Anyone else? Talk about the work-life balance?
I really had a very supportive husband. We were both 22 when we got married, and it worked for 65 years. He had just gotten out of the Army. I put him through school. He got out. He had a job. I went into business. He was supportive of my working, the hours I did, and the traveling, and I did a lot of traveling. One year I made 63 flights. I counted the tags. I commuted to Quebec, to Montreal, to Lutfi, where I did flannel nightgowns. I commuted to St. Louis, where I did barades, cotton baby dolls. I was all over the place. And I finally stopped one time because I realized I had a young, good-looking husband, and somebody might steal him if I wasn't around. And so I stopped traveling, and that happens to be the truth, okay? But Harold was very supportive. One of the things he didn't do, in all the years I had the studio, he never set foot in the studio. That was my corner of the world. I rarely, if maybe in our 65 years of marriage, asked him 3 advice about business in our industry. That's about it. He said it wasn't his industry. He didn't know anybody. He never interfered. We were supportive to each other. Bumps, but great. It was fine. School, and then she became a vice president at Vanity Fair, and I worked under her. And somebody said to me, "Doesn't that upset you?" I said, "No, I'm thrilled. What an accomplishment that she succeeded in going beyond me in a large company. The industry is great, and I'm very, very proud of it."
Janet, what are you most proud of?
Oh, well, I just love this industry. I've always loved this industry. And, of course, I loved all our suppliers. They were wonderful. We all remained friends. And I must say, the Intimate Apparel Square Club, everybody's like sisters and brothers, and you can talk to people. But I must say this, I loved the team that I worked with at Vanity Fair. And most of the designers are here tonight, and the suppliers are here tonight, and it was just wonderful. And my team, I used to have them when I'd get awards and things, and I'd say, "I'd like my team to stand up." They stood up, and I said, "They did all the work, and I got all the credit." But it's wonderful when you have the right team. When you have the right team, you can do anything. And that's what people have to realize today. They can't do it themselves. They have to have a great team.
Yeah, but Janet, you also, You also have to realize that you inspired the people working with you, and the relationship that you had with them contributed to the team and the relationship between all of you.
All right, ladies, we're winding down on time, but I'd like each of you to share either one of your most inspiring or funniest moments from the industry through your career.
All right, I'll start. I seem to be the starter here.
You're great at that, Norma.
I remember when I first became a buyer, Federated decided to send 2 young lawyers to go out in the market with me. It was Market Week, and those Market Weeks were very different than now. I mean, you planned your time that at ballet you would have your lunch. You know, everything was that way. It was just great. There were parties, whatever. So anyway, I get these 2 young guys come. I know they're lawyers, and I have a feeling that they're trying to figure out, you know, what goes on in our industry, because it was known as a very giving industry. So the first stop we make happened to be Vanity Fair in the beautiful, I forget the address, but uptown, the beautiful, the 640 Fifth Avenue, gorgeous showroom. I mean, it was a different time. So here these 2 guys are sitting, and of course they're offered something to eat and drink in the morning, and out come the models. I'll never forget it. I mean, naturally they were bra and, I guess, shapewear, girdles at that time. And these 2 guys just sat there and forget about it. The next stop we go to Bali, and we have the lunch there and all that, this wonderful lunch that was catered. Oh, it was incredible. And we're on the way out, and Sam Stein's person calls me over and hands me a bottle of liquor. I will never forget this. These guys are standing there. I said to myself, I'm finished. It's over. Anyway, that was one of the stories I remember.
I can't say anything. Right, secrets.
Okay. All right, that's it.
I don't know if anything specifically funny, but one of the highlights of my life was being asked to redesign a habit for a nun's order in Boston.
That can be redesigned?
I can't remember the name of the woman. She was the lingerie buyer at Federated, and she called me up and she said, my aunt is a mother superior of this, I think, sister, well, they were a nursing order. And she said they got permission from the Pope to change their habit because they were a nursing order and it interfered with their work. And it interfered with their driving. They wore a wimple that cut off their peripheral vision, and when they were driving the car, they couldn't see. So I had and I've always somehow or other, not intentionally, but always been surrounded by Catholics. So I had my 3 Italian sample hands who were from Italy and Catholic, and I had 2 assistants who were Catholic, and they all said, we'll work for nothing. I said, no, you won't. I said, you will not work for nothing. We will do it. Oh, and they said to me, we have to show, she said, how do you work? I said, well, I'll do some, so I said, you know, I'm Jewish, and all nuns looked alike to me. And she said, well, she said, we'll get you a picture of the different orders in the country, and she did. She sent me pictures of every Catholic order in the United States, and they wanted to be different. Well, that was a challenge, so I went ahead and I had sketches done, and I submitted it, and they brought it back, and they picked one design, which we executed. Okay, and oh, I should tell you, the Mother Superior, when she came to me, was wearing full None. I think this was...
Full none. That's the technical term, full none.
Well, no.
It was winter time. She had a cape with 99 loops and buttons down the front, and the black and the white. It was, At any rate, we did the job, and as she walked out the door, she turned to me and she said, "Oh, by the way, what do I owe you?" And I said, "Nothing. It was my pleasure. God will take care of me on your side." Because I haven't taken care of me on my side.
Unfortunately, ladies, we are out of time for this evening. I know, we want to hear so much more. But thank you so much for being here this evening and sharing your stories with us.
Great. We're going to do something very spontaneous here tonight. One question for each lady from the audience. So think about your question. You get ready for the answers. And we start with Norma. One question for Norma.
I'll come around with the mic. Raise your hand if you have the question for Norma. Don't everybody jump at once.
Good, good.
All right, I got one.
I didn't hear anything about bashing the industry.
Excuse me?
I didn't hear anything about bashing the industry. I heard about good things about the industry.
Oh, like Janet said, that's a secret. Thank you, Janet.
Next question for Janet.
Do we have one for Janet? Spray lights.
Can you just tell us one secret?
One secret.
Nobody here will tell, we promise.
Right now, I can't think of one.
Be careful, Miss Rosna.
Yeah.
Be careful what you ask for. You may not get what you want.
Uh-oh. Roz, so if you were to give advice to the intimate apparel industry and executives today, what
Executive what?
executives in the intimate apparel industry today, because business has not been that great, what would you say?
I think that's difficult, and I understand it. What would my advice be? Try new things. I know we have to cut 2,500 pieces of each color. In SKUs, they go up the kazoo. So you can't try. I've always wondered why the large companies can't have a boutique line for trying out new. Because we have designers in this country that is good and better than Europe has. But we cut so many pieces that if you make a mistake, it's not easy to eat them with marinara sauce. And so if there could be a way, if somebody could find a way to have a segment of a new corner, the old stuff is going to sell, but you get your foot into the door with something new. The T-shirt bra will sell because we need T-shirt bras, okay? But if we came in and said, I have something hot and new, that's what sells. And that's I know it's expensive. A bra to make is, well, all the foundation garments are, not just a bra, even the control garments. It's not cheap to make anything. I have people coming to me who want to do startup companies because they're frustrated. They tried working as designers in large companies. They feel their creative genius is not appreciated, blah, 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 okay? It takes easily $200,000 to start a little intimate company. But the large companies can experiment and write it off as a loss. Uncle Sam pays for that.
one last question. A lot of us take the grueling subway to work every morning, but I hear Miss Janet may have had other means of transportation during her career. Miss Janet, how did you get to work?
Well, they'd pick me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be in my office by 6:30, 7 o'clock. And then I'd go home at night at 6 o'clock, and then I'd get home till about 9 o'clock. And then we purchased a Piper airplane, and we flew into Teterboro, and then we had a chauffeur pick us up from New York and Teterboro, and then I'd get in my office. But I still had to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, even if we had a Piper.
It's better than the subway.
Thank you. I mean, this has been a fabulous evening, and a big round of applause to the ladies and to Amy for doing their stuff.
Thanks for inviting us.
Norma, thank you. Janet, thank you. Ross, thank you. Amy, thank you. I would like to acknowledge that is two past presidents with us tonight. Is Audrey Arnsdorf, which was president for 1977 to 1989. Can you please stand up? We also have Janet Kay, formerly Janet Maliki. Can you please stand up? She was president from 2001 to 2005. It's been a great evening. The FEMIs are coming on February 3rd. All what we do is to support the students. So I hope to see each and every one of you at the FEMI on February 3rd. Thank you very much. Have a safe trip home and a great evening to all.